good morning, everybody who's still here. My name is Tiffani Bova. I am the Global Growth and Innovation Evangelist at Salesforce. I have the wonderful pleasure of traveling around the world, speaking in front of audiences such as this to talk about sort of what does the new competitive landscape look like, how should companies be thinking about growth, what are the things you should be looking out for across the horizon, and hopefully you'll find this informative. I've also put some things that are very specific to the Brazilian market in this presentation to try to bring home some of the points that I'm trying to make. Prior to being here at Salesforce, I spent a decade at Gartner as a research fellow. If you're familiar with Gartner, we're the largest analyst and research firm in the world, covering things around technology for the CIO and IT market. And I had the pleasure of being the lead analyst global around sales transformation and the impact of digital marketing in the way companies grow around the world. So I was part of the team that put together the prediction that the CMO, or Chief Marketing Officer, was going to spend more money than the CIO by this year. And the good news is that that prediction actually came true, so that's always good. We were just about 0.2 off. But in that prediction then came a flurry of acquisitions from Salesforce and others to buy technology around the marketing stack to make sure that we were capturing all of the monies that were going to be spent as related to the customer. And so this presentation is a combination of work that I did in my previous role at Gartner as well as now what I'm doing here. But I'm a little bit unique in the sense that I used to be a practitioner, meaning I ran a division of gateway computers for sales, marketing, and service. And before that, I was in the web hosting space. I was Eloqua's beta client. I was Constant Contact's beta client. And so I have been selling in the recurring revenue models for well over 15 years. And so it gives me this unique perspective of some of the things I will say up here are not things I just think because of what I've seen and what I've heard from customers like yourselves, but also actually having done the job of running divisions from a sales perspective, from a marketing perspective, as well as from a customer service perspective. So with that, let me get started. Customer experience being the new battleground is something that I started talking about 5 years ago. And one of the reasons that I actually joined Salesforce, there was two actually. One of them was, for any of you who have attended the Dreamforce conference in San Francisco, it is a small gathering of about 150,000 of our closest friends that come into San Francisco for the week. And it was probably an event that if you have attended, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But I've probably attended 1,000 events like this over the course of my career. And it was the first event ever that I felt when I left that I actually wanted to be a better human being. It was one that really resonated with me around the culture and sort of the way we think about the way we give back to the social consciousness of the communities that we're in, as well as the nonprofits and the businesses that we help support. But the second reason was that I wanted to get much closer to this conversation. I wanted to see how companies were using experience as a competitive weapon against those that they were competing against. So the first thing that I'll say is, for those of you who are customers, make your buying decisions based on things that are readily available today. I have to do this. I've never had to do this now, and now I have to do this. But basically, I'm going to talk about some things that are forward-looking that may not be available in our technology today. So the first thing that I'll say is customers will remember the experience they have with a brand much longer than the price that they paid. So I'm going to give you an example. How many of you have caught Uber in the last 30 days? Okay, now keep your hands up. Unless you had to do an expense report, how many of you remember how much you paid for that ride? And there is my point. 95% of you who had your hands up, put your hands down when I asked you how much you paid. But I bet you will remember, was the car smelly? Was the driver nice? Did he take you on the right route? Did the app work? That, to me, is the experience. And I personally use Uber pretty much everywhere that I go. I use it for the experience. One is, I travel around the world. This is the 5th continent I've been on this year speaking. So I would tell you that I often don't have the currency of the country where I am. So one for me is ease of use around currency. The second is that I don't always know where I'm going, so the app can, once I enter in the information, the app will tell me where I'm going. And the third reason is because right now it directly connects into our expense system. So I don't have to take the receipt like I would normally in a taxi, write down how much the ride was, if I in fact remember how much the ride was. I don't lose the receipt, and then I have to take a picture of it and turn it into my expense report. Now, everything happens seamlessly. And then for those of you who do travel often, especially the women in the audience, the most important for me is someone will know where I was last. Because sometimes Uber knows where I am more than my family does. But ultimately, those are the reasons that I choose Uber over a taxi. Because a taxi or an Uber, the job is exactly the same. I need to get from point A to point B. I'm either going to take a taxi, I'm going to rent a car, but let's talk taxi and Uber for a moment. I will spend more money for Uber. I have stood on a corner in Buffalo, which is in the United States. It was about 20 degrees Fahrenheit. It was snowing out, and I'm standing with my phone in front of me, waiting for my Uber like this as taxis were driving by. Now, why is that? Because of the experience. Those three things. I didn't have to worry about having money in my pocket. I didn't have to worry about my expense system, and it helped me know where I was going. That's what I mean by we as consumers now have this expectation of this experience. And you'll say, but Tiffani, hold on, we're at a B2B conference. What does that Uber experience have to do with what we're here talking about today? This is what it has to do with. 80% of us globally say that experiences a company provides are as important as the products that they sell. And 51% say most companies fall short of those expectations. Now, this is both across B2B and B2C. The trick here is we are all consumers every day in our personal lives. We do not walk into work and say, I'm going to take off my consumer jacket and put on my business jacket, and now I'm a different person. That's not what happens. The expectations follow us from our consumer lives into our business lives. And so when we enter business and it doesn't feel seamless like the Uber experience I just described, that's where we say it's failing to meet expectations. That happens between the consumer expectation and the business expectation. And where it starts to fall apart is that our expectations have changed. The first is we used to be very reactive in the way we would respond to a customer as a business. There was a problem, they would call us, we would answer the call. We would solve their problem. The credit card was declined, the bill wasn't sent, the product isn't working, the product showed up damaged. Whatever it might be, we then would respond with the answer. And there were thousands of these contact points between our customers and ourselves in the B2B world. Then we moved to being much more proactive. Something like, our service is going to be down between midnight and 1 a.m. There's a recall in a particular product we have. It's time for your car to get oil or to be serviced. We began to become very proactive in the way in which we communicated based on information we were gathering from the systems that we had put into place. And so once again, we'd moved from being reactive to being very proactive. And maybe there was millions of contacts because we were pushing out information. Now we're at a place where it is very predictive that people who buy apples and oranges are more likely to buy pineapples. And so if you are a customer who has apples and oranges, we know, based on all these other customers, that you, in fact, are more likely to want pineapples. So now we are going to proactively reach out to you in a predictive manner and say, we anticipate that you're going to want this next because of all these other customers we've already had that look just like you, either by size or industry or vertical or country, whatever it might be. And so we are going to predict what it is that you're going to need. Now, prediction, when it gets into the billions, is not always humans. We now have this advent of machines talking to machines becoming very predictive with each other. So I'm a manufacturing plant. I have 1,000 orders. I only have 500 widgets. I need 500 more. The system knows that it has 1,000 in the pipeline. The machine knows it only has 500 parts. It predictively reaches out and orders another 500. Who's on the other end of that? Could be a machine, could be a bot, could be AI, could be a human. But that is a predictive reach out. Now, pretty soon, those communications are going to happen without humans, where then the machine could come back and go, I can't get it to you for 3 days. And the machine knows that that falls without my window of what I want to actually have happen. So the machine reaches out to the next supplier, and the next supplier, and the next supplier. Soon the machine conversations will actually start to happen from a service perspective. So we currently do some work with a company by the name of Kone that does escalators and elevators. And when the escalator or elevator actually needs service, it makes a call. The call actually will say, what kind of service does it need? What are the parts that are needed? How much time will it take? Sends a ticket to a repairman who's in a van, and it says, nope, this repairman does not have that part. Do not give him that job. And it moves on until it finds the right repairman in the truck that is close by. It arranges and schedules it. Everything happening from an automation perspective. The driver shows up. The ticket shows up on their handheld device. All the information that they need that was brought to them by machine intelligence off of it itself. There's going to be billions of support tickets opened between now and 2020 coming from machines. So when we think about sort of the future of B2B, this is not just about solving the human element of this. This is also about how do we respond to the fact that now not only are our customers becoming more digitally savvy, but the customers themselves may actually be becoming machines and AI. And that's where things really start to get interesting when it comes to B2B. So the way to solve this is you've got to figure out how do you get to the future before your customers do to meet them before they get there. Now, I don't need you to be Steve Jobs or Jeff Bezos or Mark Benioff. I don't need you to be years out. I need you to think about how can I be 2 quarters, 3 quarters, anticipate what my customers want next, and make sure that I deliver them what that is. It could be something as simple as, it used to be my customers would call in when they had a problem. Then technology caught up, and then it was email. They would email me and open a ticket online. Now my customers are tweeting, Facebook messaging, some other social network. They're trying to tell me that they have a problem and they want to communicate. So in that case, that's what I mean by just making sure that if the new channel of service is going to be Messenger, that you're able to have somebody watch that channel and serve them appropriately, versus having no one respond to it at all. So that's what I mean by getting there before they do and welcoming them when they show up. The trick, though, is you have to be 3 things. 3 things have to happen. 1, you have to be connected, right? So 70% of customers say that they want very connected processes. So if I order something online and I want service online, but today I only can order online and my service is by a human being. And so they feel that that service and sale is not connected. The second is it needs to be personalized. Personalized in the way that I want to feel like you know me, you know I'm your customer, you know something about me, and you're treating me accordingly. So whether I'm a recurring customer, a first-time customer, it's my first order, whatever it may be, customers are saying across both B2B and B2C, and I'll show some stats in a moment, you may be surprised to know that these expectations are actually higher, as you can see. The yellow ring is business, the green ring is consumers, and so in some of these, business has actually higher expectations than consumers. Because we as consumers show up to work and we say, well, if we can get this at home and we can get this in our personal life, we should get more at work. And that's why that disconnect is happening where they're saying that they're not meeting the expectations. And 66% of customers are saying that they want on-demand engagement. It's very important. I want a response when I want it, how I want it, where I want it. Now, I'm not saying you have to be everywhere. I'm not saying you have to answer them immediately within seconds in every channel. I'm not saying that I need you to be in Facebook Messenger and answering on Twitter and then having a portal and then having email and having a phone and having a 24/7. I'm not telling you have to do everything, but you need to realize wherever your customers want you, in the majority, you need to make sure that you're servicing them. So if you have a minority that's communicating to you via Twitter, maybe that's not a channel that you immediately activate. But if you have 90% that are saying, we want 24/7 email support, maybe that is something that you decide that you want to try to figure out how to solve. So if speed is the first thing, the next one is technology. So, this is something that's been interesting to me over the last 2.5 years, is not exploiting and using the technology you already have deployed. So I get this often. For those of you who are Salesforce customers in the room, first let me say thank you for being customers. But the second thing I'll say is that what I hear a lot is, we have Salesforce. We spent all this money on it. We had all these high hopes. Nobody's logging in. What can you do, Salesforce? I'm not sure how I can help you get your people to log in, because it's usually a people issue or a process issue, or they don't trust the technology, or they don't know how to use it, or they weren't trained, or they feel like it's someone watching what they're doing every day and they don't want to share that information. Whatever the reason may be, they're not using the technology. And so you, as business owners, have spent all this money on this technology and it's not being utilized. And so if we go back to everything I just said, reactive, proactive, predictive, responsive, fast, personalized, and you're not using technology, it's never going to be able to scale. So technology is this linchpin of pulling everything I'm saying together. We could go through each of these, but the first thing I'd say is that mobile is where we all expect to now engage with brands. M-commerce, from a commerce perspective online, still desktops outrate the percentage of commerce that's happening online, but mobile is continuing to accelerate from an e-commerce perspective. So while retail and selling in retail is still predominantly brick and mortar, meaning the retail stores and storefronts, e-commerce, and growing, by the way, even though we have a lot of challenges there, it is still growing. E-commerce is growing 3x the amount of growth rate you're seeing in brick and mortar retail, but still a very small percentage, still in single-digit percentages from a retail perspective. Of the commerce that's happening online, a large percentage of that is now shifting to m-commerce. So you're actually conducting commerce on your phone versus just doing research and then going into the store and buying, or doing research and then going to your desktop. But the thing that starts to get very interesting to me is the voice-activated assistants and the chatbots. So I'll give you an example. In the US, Ford, the motor company Ford, has a deal with Amazon Alexa and Starbucks, the coffee store. So if you are in your Ford, it may say, hey, Tiffani, predictive, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You usually have a latte at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's 2 o'clock. Would you like one? Now, this is my car, right? Hey, Tiffani, it's time for your latte. Well, as a matter of fact, it is time for my latte. Would you like to go? There's one 2 blocks away. Soon, not yet, Ford will be able to drive me on its own. The car will be able to autonomously take me. But today, that's not the case. But now a map will pull up and show me where the Starbucks is and give me directions. I can drive to the Starbucks, and now instead of actually pulling out money, pulling out my Starbucks card or my credit card, or showing my app, guess what my wallet is? Anybody? It's going to be my car. So the biggest computer you currently own, if you've bought a car in the last couple of years, is your car. So soon your car will become your wallet. So voice-activated assistants, intelligence underneath in the IoT layer around the car knowing where it is and mapping that out. Mobile apps then communicating to you that entire seamless experience happening, all with the intention of delivering this experience in the car. So now who delivers that experience? Is it Ford? Is it Amazon? Is it Starbucks? You as an owner of the car don't care. You just think, this is great. My car does this for me. And so this is the seamless experience. So now, are you going to buy a Ford or are you going to buy another brand car around the same price? Would you make a decision because of the experience you're going to have inside of the Ford versus what you're going to have inside of a competitor if the gas mileage is the same and the price point, let's just make it, call it even. You would choose, I'm guessing, the experience car. That's what I mean by it becoming the new product. And thinking differently about how and where you're delivering these services. On the chatbot side, it can go woefully wrong. So chatbots are a great way to keep communication in real time, but I'll give you an experience from last week. So I fly, 275,000 miles a year, something like that, with one airline. So this airline made an announcement that they did not want, and if you do any research, you'll figure out who it is, but didn't want their flight attendants to be very nice to passengers anymore. Literally, this came out in a memo last week. I said, did they actually put that in writing? They did. So I jump on Twitter. I grab the article and I say, please tell me this isn't true. You know, I'm 3 million miles in. I have this status with you. So they immediately respond. They immediately respond via Twitter. Oh, we're very, we really appreciate your service. We're glad that you're one of our frequent flyers. What can we do to make this right? So I say, you can take the memo back and say, you like someone else in the United States who said it the wrong way a couple weeks ago, just pretend you said it the wrong way and meant you wanted your people to do this instead of you didn't want your people to do this. And so they came back and they said, what is it you're exactly talking about? So now, once again, this is a very fast conversation. I didn't realize whether it was a chatbot or a human. So all I did was I captured the article again, and I tweeted it, and I put the finger that points down to the article. So no words, no response. Then I knew it was a chatbot. Because you don't know what the finger is. Well, you could if it was the wrong finger, but this finger particularly maybe going downwards. So I knew right away that that was a total fail, right? They weren't really paying attention to that one of their top-tier customers was complaining that you put out this memo because they gave it away the moment I used a character that the bot couldn't recognize and the conversation was over. So that's what I mean by it will give me a good experience that I feel like someone is paying attention to me and listening, but in actuality, that it wasn't really listening to me. It was just being responsive and personalized. So it grabbed that I was a top-tier customer just because of what I said, not my name, et cetera. So there are ways to use it to give you this responsive connection with your customers and enable you to be available 24/7, but then it can go awry if you don't pay attention to what it is that you're actually doing. Overall, we don't have a data problem. All those things I just said, from an IoT, machine learning, analytics, voice-activated natural language processing, bots, no shortage of data. Much smarter platforms to then pull that data and do something with it. And then saying, how do we push it to these new interfaces, like the example I gave you about the car, or the Alexa devices within your homes. There's actually a stat out that says that you will have more conversations with artificial intelligence than you will with your spouses in the next couple of years. Some of that is because if you dictate a text message or an email, that's talking. If you ask it to remind you to do something, all those little conversations over the course of the day, it's going to continue to accelerate. So these new interfaces can absolutely transform what customer experience is actually delivering, both on the positive and negative side. Now, data is interesting at the top level. But if you don't refine the data around analytics, right? If data is the new oil, the analytics is the refinery to refine that oil, and intelligence is the petrol that actually powers the growth of the business. So having data not analyzed is one thing. But if you have the data and you analyze it and you don't take the intelligence to do something differently, then don't track the data. If you're not going to use the intelligence or the insights, right? A customer who has apples and oranges also wants pineapples. If you go, well, that's really interesting that 60% of our customers who have apples and oranges also have pineapples. That's nice. Good to know. And then you don't do anything with it and say, well, wait a minute. Let's go find those other customers who have apples and oranges and try to sell them pineapples. So you have to actually want to do something with the data when you start capturing it across the board. This is where companies have the biggest technology gap, is when it comes to customer experience. It's visibility and understanding into the data. It's having the systems that are cross-functional across, I'm just going to pick sales, service, marketing. And then saying, are we actually going to then make it available from an actionable standpoint and integrate it across all the channels and all the products? So this is a study that we did with Harvard Business Review looking for the gap between what's going on from a customer experience standpoint, technology-wise. And I know you're going to hear from Mark Roberge later this afternoon from Harvard as well. And so he probably will dig into some of this. But ultimately, this is where we really see an opportunity for companies to change the paradigm with their customers as it relates to customer experience. And then AI is changing the entire game. As a recovering sales rep myself, having carried a quota, run marketing organizations and service, as I've said, I used to do really well without AI. I think I do even better now with AI. Should I call 100 people today? Because your sales managers will probably tell me as a sales rep, call 100 people. Call 100 people today, call 100 people tomorrow. The reason they're saying that is because they're saying they're trying to find the 10 that are more likely to want to set a meeting with me, and then the 3 that'll take the meeting, and the 2 that will buy, or the 1 that will buy. Well, I would rather just call the 10 that are more likely to set a meeting with me than waste my time with the 90 who don't pick up the phone. That's where analytics can really make a difference. You have a customer whose credit card is about to decline. Let's proactively reach out and call them. People that are using and companies that are using AI in these ways are having exponentially better growth because of it. Because once again, this is the human and intelligence. This is not AI is here to replace everybody in sales. This is not AI is here to replace everybody in marketing. How many of you in the audience are on the sales side? How many of you are on the marketing side? Customer service? IT? Management. So sales and marketing, okay, and some managers. Okay, so I'll pick on marketing a little bit. It's sort of fun for me, so stay with me, the marketers in the audience. I think AI could help marketers a lot because you give us leads that are not so interesting. Salespeople say the leads they give are not so great. Marketing says, sales never follows up on the leads. That conversation can actually get helped with artificial intelligence. Because then sales starts to trust the data that's being given. Marketing feels like they're able to score the leads appropriately and make sure that they're having their people spend time on the right things. So now we've hit off speed and technology. The third, and sort of where this all comes together, is once again customer experience. The sum of every single one of your customers' touch points, whether they call you, email you, meet a sales rep in person, get a mailer from you in the mail, have a conversation with a bot via Twitter. It's this combination of every single touch point. Not one, but all. In my case, when I gave that example of the bot having the conversation with me, I'm so vested into that brand that even though I didn't have a good experience, I'm not leaving because there's kind of no reason for me to do that at 3 million miles. There's not much I can do at this point. But ultimately, there's other brands, restaurants, car service, hotels, where I will not go back if I have a bad experience from one side of the business where the other side of the business is still okay. So companies are saying that we have noticed, and then we see on the customer side, 57% of people have stopped buying from a company because a competitor provided a better experience. So you may not be getting beat on price, feature and functionality, or the services you provide. You may be actually getting beat on absolutely the service. And 67% of customers are saying they will spend more for a better service. That band of more, by the way, stops around 15%, depending on what your average sale price is, but about 15% is the number where people feel like if you've raised the price that much and I'm getting a better service, I still feel like it's worth the money. It's when you get above that you really have to start to turn the value dial. So now this is specific, these stats are specific to Brazil. And buyers in Mexico and Brazil, actually, 300 business buyers. So you can see the customer standards are at an all-time high. So this is not just a U.S. issue or in mature Europe or somewhere else. This is pretty consistent. The numbers might shift ever so slightly on the percentages, but still they're saying 92% of all customers say the experience a company provides is as important as the products and services. That's higher, actually, than the global average. I was in the 80s in the global average. Culturally, you have an expectation of service. So that is going to apply from the consumer side to the business side. Then this is also from Brazil and Mexico, is they dictate the experiences that they want. Where they want it, mobile apps, online portals, online communities, text SMS, and voice-activated personal assistants. So once again, going back to that, the fourth industrial revolution is here. Here are the numbers that we think are happening globally. Here's what we think is happening in your particular region. And this is about 7 or 8 points higher than the global average. So if you listen to what I've been saying and you go, I don't think that's what we're experiencing in this region, it's not what we're hearing, I just wanted to make sure that I brought home that this is not just this global phenomena that's not happening here. They are going to change if they don't find the right experience. They will switch to another brand because of a bad one. They're expecting you on the B2B side to behave more like what they get on the experience side from a B2C side. And then for the marketers in the audience, I'll let you guys know where you can get your hands on the full reports instead of just seeing this slide by slide. But when you look at top challenges in creating a connected customer experience, in Brazil specifically, number one is budget. Probably no surprise, that always seems to be a difficult one. Difficulty leveraging data, and 3, creating a shared single view of the customer. Because if you don't have a single view of me, you don't know what's going on. If I call into service or I call into support, or sales tries to reach back out to me and they don't actually know that I have an open ticket and the service that I'm buying from you is not working right now, and then sales calls me and says, I'm trying to sell you more, not a good look. The salesperson is the one that catches all the heat when something like that goes wrong. So thinking about how you have to make particular investments, I know that technology sometimes can feel like it's a heavy and expensive lift. But the customers today, just think about the last experience you had that was really good on the consumer side, and think about all the things that happen underneath that. I use Amazon as an example quite a bit. How many of you have purchased on Amazon in the last 30 days? And then I usually say, how many of you took the training to learn how to buy on Amazon? It's a trick question, don't answer, because there was no training, because it was super easy and super seamless. 32% of Amazon's annual revenue comes from its recommendation engine. People who bought this, bought that. Just that alone, and has been copied by everybody. So you have to think that easy, seamless, that experience. So now someone buys from your website and you forget, there's no recommendation engine, and so they buy one thing and they really needed to buy something else, but you don't tell them to buy something else. Their expectation is you're going to tell me in a recommendation engine. So when you don't, they don't have a good experience. And you may be surprised, Salesforce aside, it's not that expensive to get this stuff done, unless you decide you want to build it on your own, which would not be my recommendation, because it's not your core business. So take advantage of the as-a-service offerings out there now, cloud, to really allow you to be much more broad in the things that you want to do. So now how do you do this? I know Monday morning you're going to go back and say to work and say, or tomorrow, and I heard Tiffani Bova from Salesforce, and we have to do these 10 things, and we're going to do them today, and everything's going to be perfect. I wish that was the case. I know it is not. But there are things we can be doing. We have to think specifically about resetting the value of meaningful engagements. What does meaningful engagement mean to your customer? I can't answer that. If you don't know what your customers like and don't like from you today, that's the first place I'd start. Because if you don't know what they like and don't like, you can't either do more or less of whatever it is. You cannot chase everything they want you to do. Remember, you want to find the pockets of things that everybody says they want you to do, and then those are the things that you want to double down on. But you have to reset the thinking around what does that mean. So you have to start with the people and process. The biggest mistake I've seen over the last 2.5 years is people start from the inside going out. Meaning, we've always done it this way. We've grown this way fine over the last couple of years. We're going to keep growing like this over the next couple of years. We've always had sales and marketing separated. We've never had customer experience or customer service, anything but a cost center. It's always the way we've done it. And now is no longer going to deliver those same kinds of results. Trust me when I tell you what got you here is not going to get you there. The market is totally different. And the biggest difference is not technology, it's us as human beings who now have very different expectations in the way we engage with brands and the power of the smartphone in our hand and the things that we're able to do in our own homes. So ultimately, that's the most disruptive thing in the market today for me is consumers, customers, humans, more than the technology. But we have very disconnected teams. Sales and marketing, battle it out. They forget about service. We have disconnected metrics. Sales, how many sales did you deliver today? Marketing, how many leads did you generate? Customer service, how quickly did you get the customer off the phone? What was interesting when I asked what roles you had, I think if I saw 1 or 2, customer service hands go up. It's a miss for you if you came and you didn't invite your customer service executive to come up with you. Because it is the heartbeat of a customer staying with your brand as your customer service organization. And because it gets viewed as a cost center and not a revenue generation engine, it gets forgotten a lot. But once you get a customer and you have them, you want to upsell and cross-sell them. It's exponentially less expensive for you to sell to your customer base than to go get new customers. But yet, this is full of everybody who's trying to go get new customers. Who's paying attention to the customers you have? Marketing enables sales. Do you enable customer service the same way? Customer service is now being called customer success. Why is that? Because then the mindset shifts, and people don't view themselves as just the call center that takes all the customer complaints, that they actually have the ability to deliver these compelling experiences. And the third is when you have disconnected metrics and disconnected teams, as a consumer, as a customer, as a business customer, my experiences are disconnected. Marketing put out this great piece of advertising and got me to call in. So I called in and I started talking to sales, and sales had no idea what I was talking about that marketing campaign that went off. So I had to kind of educate the sales guy to let him know what was it in fact that marketing said. And then I become a customer, and then something happens, and I call into customer service, and they don't even know the product I bought. It's not funny. Happens every single day. That's what I mean by these disconnected experiences. So customers see one company. They don't care if they're calling sales. They don't care if they're talking to marketing. They don't care if they're in customer service. And it's almost even between business and consumer. The reason I show this across business and consumer is because everybody gives me a hard time that I give too many consumer examples. And this is a B2B event, or I'm a B2B company. Yes, but the people you're selling to within a B2B company is a C, is a consumer. Those expectations don't go away. Sales and marketing alignment drives success, no question. You have sales and marketing together, it is a much better result. But I'm going to go back to what I just said. The real trifecta of growth today is when you include service. Customer service, delivery service, anybody who's on the post-sales service side of the house. They're the ones that keep the existing base from churning. They're the ones that keep the existing base to come back and buy more from you. So high-performing organizations, they are 1.6 times more likely when service is connected to outgrow the competition. So the future for you is contextual. What's happening in your market? What are your customers looking for? I almost challenge you to not worry about what your competition is doing. I ask you to remember who your best experience was on the consumer side over the last 30 days, what made it so compelling, and then go try to replicate that same kind of experience in your own organization, and then you see the gaps between the two. Your competition is interesting, but they may be watching you, you're watching them, you're all sort of just not doing much. Well, they're doing that, we're doing this, we're good. They're doing this, we're doing that, we're good. No, I want you to think about who's really pushing the envelope. So you have to establish this customer-centric culture. Start with the customer, work back in. Not what you've always done, but what your customers expect you to do. Not everything, but what's important. Redefine the relationships between your partners, even in cooperative arrangements, which means you may be working with someone who you viewed historically as a competitor. Think about how can you work with them. Select key performance indicators that actually drive the right behavior between sales and marketing, between sales service and marketing, between customer experience. What are you tracking? Net promoter scores, customer satisfaction, churn rate. If everyone's sharing in a metric, everyone is going in the same direction. Use data in a predictive way. Apples and oranges, pineapples. I use that example because I'm from Hawaii, and it's like, everybody likes pineapples. So ultimately, then I don't get into tech conversations. But there is a lot of power between apples and oranges and pineapples. You just have to know what those three things are in your environment. Drive towards this very intimate sales engagement. Intimacy, not creepy. Watching and knowing, now because of where I work, and I'll watch an ad or I'll click on an ad, and then I'm 3 weeks later and I'm on some completely different site, and all of a sudden I see this ad served up to me from the company I looked at and I know it's us powering it, and I'm always like, creepy, and I try to close the ad. You have to find a way, the balance between personalizing and delivering a really compelling service. So for me, B2B and B2C is being replaced by B2E. And what I mean by that is where E stands for everything, everyone, and every experience. Because we are all consumers who work in a business world who have expectations that we need to meet to make sure that our customers are satisfied, continue to drive our success going forward. Trust me when I tell you, your biggest and greatest and most effective sales force, 2 words, your most effective sales force is your customers advocating on your behalf, telling your story to potential customers who you don't know. And the way to do that is to deliver them these very high-touch, compelling experiences. So I think that's it from me, except we're going to do some questions. But I so appreciate your time. I know that you were having the translation, so I tried to slow it down a little bit and not use some of my American isms. So hopefully it was good. First, this is my first time speaking on the continent, so I appreciate the invitation from the team to be here, and I hope that you will keep in touch with me over time at wherever you can find me. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Bom, vamos abrir para algumas perguntas. Quem tem perguntas para a Tiffani? Aqui. A gente só vamos fazer 2 perguntas, tá? Porque a gente está um pouquinho atrasado.
I have my handy-dandy translator over here.
Hey, Tiffani.
He'll help me out.
Thank you for the presentation. And sorry about my English.
No, it's perfect.
You said that AI can help marketing in the sales teams, like getting feedback. But when I was studying about AI, and I saw a case from Nokia that the data predicts that the smartphone is going to be like bullshit. And a woman who worked in Nokia said, okay, I was in Brazil and India, and I saw that the poor people, the rich people, everyone was like spending their money in buying a smartphone. And the Nokia guys was like, no, the data didn't say that, forget it. And what happened? Everyone knows, like, Nokia died and Apple
Is a $1 trillion company.
yeah. So, have ever this scenario happen in Salesforce, or you can see that how AI could like help, but what you need to see in this whole process that we can like prevent that bad scenarios about this.
Got it. So I'd say this. I'm going to say what I said during my presentation. This is not about AI replacing. The combination of the human and AI is where the power comes in. So just listening to AI and just listening to the human, in my mind, not a great idea. It's what can the data tell us? And let's just say, playing that out, right? The Nokia data, I don't know what data you're talking about, but in that, right, if Nokia said no, they're not going to buy smartphones, nobody said, but well, hold on a second, what if they do? What if the data is just not completely correct, and we may just have a softness, or it's not as big as we thought, or whatever. And maybe they did something else as another plan versus just one thing. And so I would tell you that this is where AI and the power of the human together is so powerful. But what I don't want to have happen is the human goes, none of the data is correct, or all of the data is correct. It's really, everyone who buys apples and oranges is more likely to buy pineapples. As a human, you would have never known that because you can't look across 10,000 customers. And so why don't we pilot that from a marketing perspective and do a mailer out to customers who also have apples and oranges and see what happens? Lo and behold, they actually end up buying pineapples. Let's go do it. If the machine comes back and goes, people who buy this are never going to buy that again, and you go, well, that doesn't sound right because there's a portion of our customers who have, so let's go test, and then they end up buying, and so you prove that the data in that particular set was not correct. So it has to be a balance. Never hear if somebody says, that's why when people say AI is going to wipe out jobs, I think there are certain jobs that need to be disrupted, and I think there's certain functions within sales that humans no longer need to do, but I think the combination between the two is where the power lies. But I don't think it's an either or, I think it's an and. Okay?
Mais alguém tem alguma pergunta? Ali?
Hi, Tiffany. My name is Bianca. I work at Cato Online. I'm on a recruitment online and HR segment. First of all, thanks about our information. It was very relevant to me. And I would like to understand if you have your most successful case or disruptive case on sales structure that you ever seen to sell to big and strategic accounts, big enterprises.
So a best practice to sell into them?
Yes.
So this goes to segmentation. So if you're familiar with the triangle of segmentation, which I call the Bermuda triangle of segmentation because it only has so much applicability, I think, right? Where you take the top as big strategic enterprise accounts, and then you made the next tier is like, enterprise accounts, and then you have small and mid business, and you have small business, and then you might have, small office, home office, as an example. And you pour all of your resources there. The guess is that your competition is also always focused up at the top, big strategic accounts, which means should you maybe focus on tier 2 and tier 3 accounts? Because you can win at that level, and then it starts to earn you the permission to say, well, I now have these 10 accounts, which are the next level down from these strategic accounts. And the strategic accounts are going to say, who do you have that's big like me or complex like me? And you can say, well, here, this is who we have. And so I always worry when companies come and say, we want to go after those big guys. The challenge is it takes a long time to sell into them. It's very relationship-based. It may be an 18 to 24-month sales cycle, if that. Maybe you need to partner with someone who already has a relationship in there And you can handle one or two of those accounts, because if one of those big accounts goes, yes, I'm going to turn over the business to you, it could completely wipe out all of your resources trying to chase all the business that they have. And I like to say, when someone gives you a yes, that's great. If they give you a really quick no, that's also great. A really long maybe will kill you. And in the big accounts, it's a really long maybe, because you're trying to do everything you can to get them. Where if you just maybe focus on one or two at the big level, but you want to go win one tier below, because if all your competition is going there, this is a great market for you to establish. And the sales cycle here is going to be shorter, not less relationship-wise, right? And it's all about sales cycles, because as you get larger, the sales cycle gets longer. So I know that wasn't an exact example, but it was what I would say to anybody who said, we're going to go after strategic accounts. I'd say, get a person or two to do that, but you need somebody or a group of people to go after the business that's going to pay the bills today, because that's going to pay the bills in the future.
Tiffani, thank you very, very much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.